Hey everyone! Welcome back to my series titled Breaking Down the Soundtrack, the series where I take an in-depth look into the soundtrack of your favorite game, analyze the music, and ask the important questions. This series is aimed to help you understand why soundtracks sound the way they do and some core aspects to them. This series is also a light understanding of how music for game soundtrack works, so if you're one star writing, this may help you. For today's episode, we will be taking a look into the afterlife with a game I picked up titled Spiritfarer. Now, no more fooling around. Let's begin our trip into the episode. Before we discuss the soundtrack, we should do a background check on the game. Published by Thunder Lotus Games, Spiritfarer is a management simulator released on August 18, 2020, where you are in charge of finding wandering spirits and helping them resolve whatever's still bothering them. Then from there, you set them free into the afterlife, and cry. You as the player play as a young girl named Stella, who has just been deemed as the new Spiritfarer. The game mechanics are simple at first, but progressively get more complex with each new passenger you get. Tasks start to feel like they're piling up, and errand runs start to get longer and longer. Now that we know a bit about the game and how it works, let's discuss exactly what we are hearing. Written by Max LL, the soundtrack is heavy orchestration, with a few surprises here and there. Overall, the soundtrack has an incredible amount of presence in the game. While the story is there, the music is what really goes in for the emotions to start pulling at those heartstrings in moments of intense feeling. While on the seas, there are a variety of other tracks you can hear, depending on where you are or where you decide to pass through. For almost every bit of the game, there's a song playing that either puts the player into an adventuring mood or hits at the heart, and these two seem to be the primary categories. Let's hear a few examples of what these genres sound like.
Flowing through the seas of time, memories that were left behind bring us closer to the end of this journey where we grew as friends. Take me through the mist and storms in waters that are still unknown. Under guiding starlit sky we will learn how to say goodbye, and I'll take your hand and guide you through.
Overall, the two genres are heavily orchestrated and make more use of string and woodwind instruments compared to percussion or brass. The overall soundtrack is really astonishing with how it's able to amplify what the player should be feeling. In a game where the story is heavily based on emotion, the soundtrack is very important to get the player in the right state of mind. With Spiritfarer, the soundtrack stuck the landing, setting to accomplish this task and do it really well. One thing that stuck out to me is Max's background being primarily film, scores, and soundtracks, which in turn made the soundtrack of Spiritfarer make a little more sense with how it was written. Max LL seems to specialize in orchestration for films, video games, and audiovisual projects, according to his Bandcamp bio, so it's no surprise this is such a beautifully written masterpiece. Now comes the part where we break down a track and try and see what it can tell us about the entire soundtrack. The song I chose is titled Thunder Harvest. One of the first tracks you will hear, this piece is a fast-paced roller coaster of a song. Starting simple with a woodwind instrument, things quickly get more upbeat and intense when the drums and lower octave instruments get introduced. The song is pretty melodic and plays with its scale quite a bit. At the end, all instruments trail off one by one until we are left with the initial woodwind fading out as a piano softly plays the rest of the song. This piece is only around for a minute 30, but the energy it delivers when the track actually starts is incredible. Usually played in thunderstorms, for obvious reasons, Thunder Harvest is a great example of what the soundtrack overall has to offer. The melodies, the incredible orchestration with emphasis on woodwind and percussion, the great structure giving the listener a fantastic ride mentally with the music, and so much more. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot to break down here as the soundtrack overall is pretty simple. So let's move on to our next section. Now that we know some in-depth information about the soundtrack, we can ask some overall questions. The first and major one being, does it help the game and make it better? I would definitely say that the soundtrack not only helps the game, but the plot as well. In moments of raw emotion and feeling, the background music is sort of like that final push on the emotions to start making you feel things. With the soft composition, the feelings become more emotional as characters we've made beautiful moments with move on, and we have to say goodbye. The next question we can ask is, would it sound any better with another genre? Personally, I feel like orchestral scoring for a bright colored game like this fits perfectly. If the soundtrack were in a different genre such as Western or sci-fi synth, then the player wouldn't experience as much emotions from a scene. Orchestral scoring is one of the most emotional, heart-moving genres to date. As some final remarks, this soundtrack has quickly become one of my favorites in the past few months, and looking into it for this video gave it a higher spot on my list. The composer Max LL said on his Bandcamp, "The times we are living through have made this experience of writing music for this project all the more meaningful, and I feel like Spiritfarer couldn't have come at a better time. The connections and relationships we develop with our friends and family stay with us. We have to treasure them, be more compassionate as individuals and as society, and better learn how to say goodbye when the time comes." And that just about wraps up our time for this episode of breaking down the soundtrack. If you liked it, please do hit that thumbs up button to let me know that you enjoyed this episode and want to see more like these. Also, do comment down below what soundtracks you would like me to analyze for future videos. Finally, subscribe and hit that bell to make sure you know when I upload and you don't miss the next episode. Anything else important will be linked down below. That's all for today. I'm Time Traveler, signing off. Bye-bye!
All the steps one takes to move on to a place, a world on sea to us all. But it's okay, we'll be together.